exposed terrifying secrets of the cursed cabin, haunting 3 sinister attacks by an evil witch. The Johnsons thought they were finally hitting the jackpot when they inherited Grandma's old cabin in the woods. Mark and Lisa, both stuck in their daily grind, envisioned weekends filled with campfires and hikes. Little did they know, they were stepping into a nightmare instead of a dream. That first night, under a shiny blanket of stars, a chilling whistle slipped through the cracks of the worn wooden walls. Mark's heart raced. Was it just the wind? Lisa shrugged off his unease, insisting it was just the cabin settling. But when the kids, Ben and Sarah, claimed to see glowing eyes blinking in the shadows, unease crept into Lisa's voice too. With every flicker of the lantern, the darkened corners seemed to whisper secrets of their OWN.AS if summoned by the restless night. The next day started with strange occurrences. The kids' toys would vanish only to reappear in odd places. Ben swore he saw a dark figure skimming through the trees. Mark dismissed it as kids' imagination, until he caught a glimpse himself, a fleeting shadow vanishing in an instant. Panic sank its teeth into him, twisting his stomach in knots. The woods, once serene, turned sinister as howls shattered the quiet. A feeling of dread washed over them, a sense that something was watching from deep within the thicket. To get answers, Mark dug through the family's history. What he unearthed sent a shiver down his spine. Ellen, the witch, a name that echoed bitterly in the quiet town. Accused of witchcraft centuries ago, she vowed to haunt the bloodline of those who wronged her. Their blood ran cold. The whispers grew louder in the trees. Worry transformed into anxiety when their friendly neighbors, once eager to help, became icy. Helen and Joe, who had welcomed them with warm smiles, now looked away, avoiding any eye contact. On a trip to town, Lisa overheard hurried whispers. The cursed cabin. Stay away from the Johnsons. Panic gripped her heart as the veil of safety slipped away, leaving them exposed. And then it happened. That evening, the air thickened as darkness wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. Mark tried to ease the tension, while a calm before the storm settled like dread in the pit of their stomachs. Suddenly, the power flickered and went out, plunging them into pitch blackness. Ben and Sarah clutched onto each other, their gasps filling the silence. Mark's instinct screamed that it was only the beginning. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A force knocked over a chair, wood clattering on the floor. The atmosphere thickened like mud around them. "You've awakened me," echoed a shivering voice, chilling them to the bone. The shadow materialized like a nightmare, eyes ablaze with a sinister glow. Mark's heartbeat thundered, and fear enveloped them like a storm. This wasn't TA's simple inheritance. It was a trap. As they stood there, fear-stricken, reality spiraled into chaos. What lay ahead was unknown. Would they survive the witch unleashed from the darkness? The darkness pulsed, heavy and alive, wrapping around Mark and his family like a suffocating shroud. The voice, echoing with malice, sent a fresh wave of terror crashing over them. "You've awakened me." It wasn't TA's statement. It was a proclamation, marking their doom. Lisa clung to her children, her body shaking. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, as if saying it loud enough would somehow make escape possible. But the cabin, ancient and unforgiving, stood resolutely in their path, its doors closed tight as if waiting for the inevitable. Mark turned slowly, his instincts on high alert. The air crackled with an unseen energy. Something unseen moved near the windows, darting between shades of darkness. "Stay close," he warned. They moved as one, pressed together like a single soul searching for light in this oppressive void. As they reached the door, it flung open with a creak so loud it pierced the chilling silence. Through the threshold, an inky blackness beckoned them. The outside world was suffocated by shadows, and the moon, once bright, now looked like a silver coin, battered and draped in clouds. "Mom!" Sarah wailed, her voice breaking through the thick veil of fear. "What is that?" She pointed into the darkness surrounding their cabin. A dark figure, undefined yet menacing, hovered just beyond the tree line, its glowing eyes fixated on them. Mark felt his heart drop. "We need to go back inside. Now!" He ushered the kids with a firm grip, retreating just as the figure suddenly howled a sound that seemed to rip through the air, rattling the very bones inside him. The flame of the lantern flickered, casting monstrous shadows across the walls, twisting into shapes that danced and snarled in the dim light. Every crack, every groan of the old wood felt like the cabin itself was alive, reacting to the impending doom. "I know who you are," Mark shouted, trying to summon courage against the unknown. "Leave us alone." The shadows crept closer, coiling around them like serpents ready to strike. "You cannot wake what has slept for so long," the voice sneered, thick with bitterness. "This land is mine, and you are merely trespassers." With adrenaline coursing through them, Mark sprinted to the mantel, searching for anything that could give them a fighting chance. His fingers brushed against a silver pendant, ornate and cold. Beneath the weight of desperation, he couldn't tell if it was a weapon or just a pretty relic. But one thing felt true: it was tied to Grandma, a remnant of the lineage they had seen as a blessing. He gripped it tightly. "We're leaving," he yelled. Venturing toward the cabin door once more, he could feel the temperature plummeting. The air thickened, almost solidify, while the whispers grew louder, clawing at his sanity. Then Sarah cried out. Mark turned to find her staring into the shadows in horror. She's coming." From the darkness, the witch materialized, robed in shadows that twisted around her like a storm. Her eyes glowed red, as if the fires of hell burned within. "You cannot escape what you awaken," she hissed, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. Time froze. Fear seized Mark's heart. Would the pendant be enough to protect them? Or were they too late to reverse their fate? As the witch advanced, a chilling smile stretched across her face, and behind her, the shadows roiled with fury. They were trapped, cornered by an evil that had waited centuries for revenge. A sickening realization dawned on Mark. Had they truly inherited a cabin, or had they merely become vessels for a curse that would haunt them until the end? The answer loomed heavy as the witch's laughter filled the air, promising only suffering. Mark made one last desperate gamble. "Hold on, kids!" They hurled themselves into the darkness beyond the door, hoping against hope it led back to safety. As they plunged into the unknown, the witch's scream echoed behind them, melding with the night, chilling their bones. But as they fled, the shadows chased them, relentless and insatiable. What lay ahead was as unknown as the witch's wrath, and terror shrouded them. Anew would any of them survive this night? As they plunged deeper into the woods, a new sound arose, a low, rhythmic chant from the depths of the forest. The chant grew louder, weaving around them like a malevolent thread. Mark's breath quickened as he pulled his family deeper into the blackness of the forest. Every tree loomed like a sentinel, watching their flight, and the ground squelched beneath their feet, slick with damp earth. "Dad, I don't want to die." Sarah's voice trembled, cutting through the thickening fear. Mark felt his heart clench. He had to answer her, to assure her they would be okay, but the words caught in his throat. The witch's laughter echoed behind them, malicious and unforgiving, mingling with the chant, a promise of darkness creeping ever closer. "Just keep running," he shouted, forcing his voice to be steady, even as panic surged through him. They broke through a thicket into a small clearing bathed in a sickly silver light. Mark stumbled to a halt, The ground here was marked by symbols, arcane runes etched deep into the earth, glowing faintly, as if the very soil pulsed with living energy. "What is this place?" Lisa gasped, her wide eyes scanning the markings, connecting dots that made the air thick with dread. I don't know," Mark stammered. "But we shouldn't stop." They turned but halted abruptly. The trees had shifted, the shadows elongating, twisting into grotesque shapes that continued to shift, blocking all apparent paths. The rhythmic chant formed a chorus, enveloping them, a dark lullaby luring them closer. More shadows emerged. Figures flickered at the edges of the clearing, some human-like, others hideous and monstrous. Whispers crawled through the air, brushing against their eardrums, filling their minds with horrifying suggestions. "Do you feel it?" Lisa quivered. Mark nodded, the icy realization settling in. "The land is cursed. The witch, the things here, they want to let us leave." Another spine-chilling scream erupted from the shadows, deeper and more primal than the last. Shadows thickened, and from the dense mass, the witch's form became clearer, storming from the forest with fury. Suddenly, a heavy silence descended. Time stretched, suspended between terror and despair, as the witch's glowing eyes locked onto Mark. "You thought you could escape?" she taunted, her voice curling around their skin like smoke. "You are bound to the fate of this place. Forever." Mark clutched the pendant hanging around his neck, feeling its cold surface pulse against his chest. "Let us go!" he shouted, anger igniting a flicker of bravery. The witch's laughter rang through the clearing, drowning Mark's voice. "You can't compel what you do not understand." She raised her hands, and the ground beneath them shuddered as the runes flared to life, energy surging around them, pulling them towards her. "Mark!" Lisa cried, clutching Sarah tightly as their feet slipped backward, the earth scratching at their heels. He could feel the darkness clawing at him, each whisper promising agony. In desperation, Mark grasped the pendant tightly. "We'll fight. Together." A rush surged through him, the pendant glowed fiercely, illuminating the terrifying faces around them, altering the shadows. "You may have summoned me, witch, but we will not fall into your hands." All at once, the trees screamed in response, branches twisting unnaturally as the shadows wailed. The ground crackled, struggling both to hold them and to be released. Then, without warning, the chanting morphed into a thunderous roar. The cacophony pulsed with rage, and the very forest began to tremble. "Mark, what did you do?" Lisa screamed, panic etching her features. "I don't know," he shouted back as the very air erupted around them. A wind blew fiercely, as if to break the hold of the witch's curse. Yet, in that moment of hope, Mark realized the truth. They had not just woken the witch, they had stirred something more primal in the land, an ancient evil that had guarded its secrets far beyond mere curses. As they fought against the tendrils of darkness tightening around them, a piercing howl erupted from deep in the forest. Something even worse than the witch was waking. What monster would emerge next? The howl pierced through the chaotic din, slicing deep into their core. It was a guttural sound, primal and echoing through the clearing, filled with malice. Mark felt it resonate in his bones, a terrifying crescendo that promised doom. He looked at Lisa and Sarah, their faces pale, wide eyes brimming with raw fear. "Run!" he ordered again, urgency bleeding into his voice. But it felt like a command without power, as if the very air hesitated to respond. As they turned to flee, the shadows twisted. They morphed into thick, smoky shapes, reaching out with long, claw-like fingers. Some were grotesque forms, eyes glowing with a feral hunger, while others wore human-like features twisted in torment. They moved fluidly, blocking the path back into the forest. "Mark!" Lisa cried, her voice breaking. "What is happening?" "Just stick together," he shouted, rallying what little courage remained in his heart. Each step felt heavy, the ground nearly pulling them down into its depths. Suddenly, the witch's laughter erupted again, sending chills down Mark's spine. "You think running will save you?" The dark shadows surrounding her swirled with her movements, creating a whirlwind of dread. "You're entangled in my web." Mark clutched the pendant tighter. Its coldness felt like a tether to sanity. "Stay close," he urged, desperation overtaking rational thought. From behind, the howl returned, twisting into a chorus of anguished screams. It was no longer just a call. It was a warning, and the oppressive darkness inched closer, suffocating in its presence. Then came a surge of energy, like static before a storm. The runes on the ground flickered with haunting light, illuminating hidden paths among the shadows. In that instant, Mark caught a glimpse of something deep in the forest, a massive shape, towering above the trees, eyes burning like coals. "What is that?" Sarah whispered, as if uttering the question might summon some hideous monster from that shape. "I don't know," Mark gasped. Panic clawed at his throat. "We can't stay here." With a sudden jolt, he decided to make a break for the flickering light, believing it might offer them a way out. "Now!" he yelled, and they bolted towards the glowing markings, determined to escape the growing darkness. The shadows lunged, pouncing forward, snarling and screeching. Each step felt like they were running through molasses, the air heavy with dread. Mark felt his heart racing, desperation drowning out any rational thought. His family was his priority, but the weight of the forest's curse was palpable, edging them closer to an unknown horror. As they neared the ruins, the energy pulsated wildly, creating a barrier between them and the encroaching darkness. The shadows wailed, their cries piercing the night, weaving through the air like a sinister melody. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, and the runes blazed brighter, almost beckoning them. Then, without warning, a massive shadow tore through the treetops. Mark froze as the figure landed in the clearing with a ground-shaking thud. It was colossal, a beast formed of the very darkness they had been fleeing. Its glowing eyes burned with the fury of the witch, and its jagged teeth glittered in the dim light, poised to strike. Fear gripped Mark's heart tight. "Fight or flight," he shouted, trying to make sense of the chaos. In that moment, he realized courage might not be enough. They were cornered, trapped between the ancient, wicked witch and whatever nightmare had awakened in the shadows. As the beast's mouth opened, ready to unleash mayhem, Mark drew a deep breath. The pendant pulsed against his chest, the last hope flickering like a candle waiting to be snuffed out. Would it protect them, or would it only hasten their fate? What was coming next, a fierce battle, or total annihilation? The question hung heavy in the air, as shadows danced around them, threatening to consume their last moments of light. The beast loomed larger than anything Mark had ever seen, its breath hot against the chill of the night air. He could feel the ground pulse beneath its weight, trembling like a caged animal. Time slowed, stretching out each agonizing moment as Mark's mind raced through frantic possibilities. "Move!" he screamed, the word echoing off the trees and into the abyss. Lisa and Sarah hesitated, eyes darting between the beast and the flickering runes, caught in a paralyzed state of terror. Just as he thought the enormity of their doom would crush him, something inside him ignited a flicker of defiance. Summoning every ounce of strength, Mark lunged forward, dragging Lisa and Sarah behind him towards the shifting glow of the runes. Dark claws swiped through the air, slicing the space where they had just stood. The sound of tearing flesh only air, but the sickening thought of what could happen for a second sent bile rising in his throat. Instinctively, he pulled the pendant out from beneath his shirt, whispering a silent plea. "Please help us." With every frantic step, shadows leapt around them, fury dancing in their grotesque forms. Their cries morphed into a collective roar, urging the beast forward. The enormous creature's eyes locked onto them, pupils dilating with a predator's zeal. Mark's heart thudded with a relentless rhythm. "Don't look back," he urged, but his own gaze was compelled by the powerful force of fear. His pulse raced. He caught sight of the creature's teeth glistening, slick with some dark fluid, and it made his stomach turn. "Mark," Sarah said, panic lacing her voice. "What do we do?" "Through the runes," he shouted, pointing. They raced closer, feeling an electrifying tingle in the air as the light flickered desperately, flickering like it might run out of power. Mark glanced back, seeing the beast's massive maw opening wide, an ominous growl rumbling from deep within its throat. The shadows spiraled, swirling into a chaotic tempest around them, and only the glow of the runes pulsed like a beacon of hope. Then, without warning, chained shadows lashed out, snaking along the ground like black serpents. One coiled around Mark's ankle, dragging him with a force that sent him crashing onto the ground. Pain shot through him as he struggled to free himself. "No!" Lisa screamed, darting back, arms flailing as she tried to uncoil the darkness from him. "Mark!" The energy from the pendant surged, brightening the runes at his feet, and for a moment he felt warmth seep into his veins. It felt alive. "Don't!" he yelled, eyes wide, heart racing. "Get to the runes!" With a desperate push, Mark tore himself free, rolling to his feet just as Lisa and Sarah reached the edge of the glowing marks. They stepped onto the runes, and an explosion of light erupted around them, a wall separating them from the beast. The shadows screamed as the light engulfed them. "It works!" Mark gasped, adrenaline surging through him. But the relief was short-lived. The beast stood at the edge of the light, a growl rumbling deep in its throat, eyes burning with unholy hunger. As it took a step forward, the disruptive force of the shadows clawed back toward the runes, trying to extinguish their flickering power. "Hold the line," Mark shouted. They had no choice but to push deeper into the magic. The power throbbed, wild and unpredictable, drawing on their fear. Mark could feel something shift within him, a dark whisper creeping back. He glanced at Lisa and Sarah, terrified. What if it wants us to use it against ourselves? The realization struck hard. Were they really running into a trap even worse than the beast? The shadows writhed restlessly, the witch's laughter echoing in the back of his mind. Run? Or embrace it? You weave a fine thread. As the dark figure of the witch began to coalesce behind the beast, Mark's stomach dropped. They couldn't turn back, but what lay ahead? The real terror was only beginning. In that moment, Mark understood. The battle wasn't just against the beast or the witch. It was a fight against the darkness within themselves. Then, with a thundering roar, the beast lunged forward, eyes locked on them. Could they escape the shadows of their own minds? And as the surge of darkness neared, would the runes protect them, or betray them? The air crackled with tension as the beast lunged, colossal jaws snapping just inches from Mark's face. He could smell the stench of decay wafting from its gaping maw, the mingled odors of rot and death flooding his senses. He stumbled back, adrenaline igniting every nerve in his body, but the light from the runes held firm, shimmering defiantly. "Closer!" he shouted, urging Lisa and Sarah forward. "We need to stand together." Tremors pulsed beneath their feet, the ground quaking as the beast skidded to a halt at the threshold of the light, eyes locked on them, almost calculating. For a split second, it seemed to reconsider, its growling diminishing to a low rumble. But that hope shattered instantly, as the witch's laughter echoed again, twisting in Mark's skull like a knife. "Embrace your darkness," she hissed, her voice thin, serpentine, as shadows crawled closer. They clung to her like a dark cloak, the edges flickering with malice. Mark's heart raced. What did she mean? The shadows pulsed, hungry and relentless. Mark clutched his pendant, its warmth rapidly cooling as the power began to wane. "Hold on," he gasped. "I want to let you take us." Lisa's eyes darted around, wild with fear. What if the light doesn't last? What if we're trapped? Even as she spoke the words, the light dimmed momentarily, and the very fabric of reality twisted. The runes flickered violently, shadows gnashing hungrily at the borders, eager to spill forth. "Step back!" Mark yelled, instinctively grabbing Sarah's arm as they edged closer together, united against the encroaching darkness. The beast snarled, inching forward, muscles tensed, ready to pounce. Then something in the shadows shifted, a glimmer of movement catching Mark's eye. A pair of yellow eyes flickered within the darkness, a warning or a promise. He couldn't tell. In a sudden burst of clarity, he recalled the witch's words. They needed to confront what lurked within. "Trust in yourself," he cried out, feeling the weight of his friend's fear pressing down on him. Mark turned inward, searching through the rising panic. Memories bubbled to the surface, times when he had succumbed to darkness in his own life, when insecurities turned to self-loathing, when fear paralyzed him into inaction. "Face it!" he shouted, voice cracking as he felt sharp claws of the past gripping at his throat. "I won't be afraid anymore." He thrust the pendant forward, its magic fluctuating wildly, light flaring brilliantly around them, dispelling the shadows momentarily. The beast recoiled, howling in fury, its form dancing away from the radiant glow. But the witch's laughter only escalated, enveloping them. "What will you choose, Mark? Will you fight or will you surrender?" Mark felt the shadows creep into his mind, each whisper calculated and sinister. "You'll fail like you always do," they taunted. But he pressed on, forcing himself not to break under their weight. "No! I'm not going down without a fight." Suddenly, the runes pulsed with renewed vigor, a shockwave rippling through the darkness. Mark felt a surge of energy pulsating from deep within, fueled by his determination. Yet, as the light grew, the shadows thickened and writhed around them, dark fingers reaching out to strangle the light. "Together," Mark urged, locking eyes with Lisa and Sarah, his heart racing. "We can't give up. We have to believe." But just then, a horrifying realization struck him like ice water. Deep inside, he felt the dangerous allure of embracing the darkness. Was surrender the only way to defeat the creature? As shadows twisted around the light, a tempest of uncertainty swirled in his chest. What truth would they discover, pushing further into the shadows? And would they find strength in their fears, or succumb to the darkness threatening to engulf them all? The darkness thickened, wrapping around Mark and his friends like a suffocating shroud. The beast's growls deepened, vibrations echoing through the ground and rattling their bones. Every heartbeat felt like a ticking clock, reminding them that time was running out. The cantankerous laughter of the witch pierced the air, sending icy tendrils of dread crawling up Mark's spine. "Choose wisely, Mark," she crooned, her voice a melody of silk and venom. "Do you wish to wield the darkness? Or will you cling to your feeble light?" Mark felt dizzy. The shadows pressed closer, coiling tightly around his legs, a creeping chill that seeped into his skin. Lisa and Sarah huddled near him, their faces pale, eyes wide, as the reality of their situation washed over them. He could feel their fear, raw and potent, threatening to drag him down. "I won't give in," he burst out, teeth gritted. Gritting his jaw, he tightened his grip on the pendant. The runes glimmered faintly now, barely fighting against the overwhelming gloom. "Remember what we faced? We are stronger together." Lisa's voice trembled, barely rising above the ominous threats swirling around them. "Mark, I don't know if I can." "Believe," he shouted, desperation fueling his words. Just as his hope flickered, he felt it, the power of memories, times of unity surging forward. They had shared laughter, triumphs, and dreams. They couldn't let themselves be broken here. The runes responded, brightening momentarily, a beacon in the vast sea of despair. The shadows recoiled, revealing glimpses of the cracked earth beneath the ground of their fears clawing at them, desperate to swallow them whole. With a sudden roar, the beast lunged forward. Mark's heart pounded. Its claws grazed the edges of the light, a flash of teeth sinking into the air where they stood. He flinched, instinct screaming at him to run, but he held his ground. "We have to fight back." He closed his eyes, summoning memories of real strength, a friendship unbroken by the terror stalking them now. He focused hard, pouring his will into the pendant. In response, it burst forth with an almost blinding light, forcing the shadows to ripple backward like a tide. But then came the pull, a suffocating weight that whispered promises of relief. "Surrender to your fears. Let them take you." A potent desire to cradle that darkness began to churn in his gut. "Mark!" Sarah cried, breaking through his chaotic thoughts. "Don't listen to it. Don't you see?" The witch's voice licked at them like flames. "The only way to escape is to become what you fear. Embrace the shadow. Become it. You will be unstoppable." Mark's heart raced. He floundered, the shadows beckoning. He opened his eyes, and found himself staring into the abyss behind the creature, a swirling vortex of torment reflecting every doubt he'd ever harbored. Faces of past failures danced in the darkness, each accusing him, whispering of his inadequacies. "Fight!" he screamed, but inside, uncertainty echoed like a death knell. The beast screamed, lunging again, teeth gnashing, desperate to quell their radiant light. But Sarah stepped forward, brandishing a sliver of her own courage. "We cannot give in. We are more than what haunts us." The light pulsed again, hardened by her declaration. The shadows wavered. But just as the energy peaked, the air shifted like a tide pulling away from the shore. The witch's laughter echoed hysterically, thrumming with malevolence. "You want strength? Victory? Then join me in the dark. Or face what you truly are." Mark blinked, awareness flooding his mind. He had to choose. Would he step into the darkness himself, giving in to all he despised, or trust in the power of their unity? As the creature's growls grew more ferocious and the witch's words curled around him, Mark struggled against the pull. Time hung heavily, an eternal moment, or was it the calm before a storm? What path awaited them in the shadows? And could they face what lay within without succumbing? Would this battle break them, or forge a new reality? As fear settled deep in his bones, Mark took a shuddering breath, teetering on the edge. Was surrender fear's ultimate trap, or the opening to become greater than they ever imagined? Mark felt the ground tremble beneath him, a sinister reminder of the beast's proximity. The echoes of Sarah's defiant shout lingered in the air, a fragile lifeline he clung to. As the edges where light met darkness flickered dangerously, he had to make a choice, and the weight of the moment threatened to crush him. "Together!" he yelled again, pushing the words out like a last breath. He reached for Sarah and Lisa, channeling every ounce of belief into their bond. They had to trust one another. The shadows recoiled, and in that split second, he saw something shift, a weak point in the beast's monstrous form. With a roar of determination, they surged forward as one. The light from Mark's pendant intensified, casting surreal shadows that twisted and warped on the ground. The beast halted, snarling as if recognizing a challenge. "Hold on!" Mark shouted, feeling a surge of power venting from their unity. The air thickened with tension. The shadows pressed in, sinister whispers echoing around them. "Trust yourself!" Lisa screamed, her voice trembling but fierce. That was it. The words sunk deep and burrowed into his resolve. Gathering courage from their shared memories, climbing trees, roasting marshmallows, laughter that once seemed so far away, Mark thrust his pendant toward the creature. "You're just a shadow. You can't take us." The light erupted in a blinding flash, and for a moment, everything held its breath. The darkness snarled. The laughter of the witch crescendoed, her delight palpable as if feeding off their fear. Yet, something broke within that light. Mark heard a distant crack, resonating through the air like thunder. Tiny shards of darkness fell to the ground, evaporating like mist. It was working. But then the witch's laughter intensified, and suddenly the realization hit him. She had been waiting for this moment. "Fools!" she cackled, her voice slicing through the air like a blade. "You think you understand power? Power is not light. It is embracing the dark." A chill ran down Mark's spine. As if responding to her wrath, the shadows coiled back, erupting forward in a swirling mass, clawing at him and his friends. The ground beneath them shuddered violently, splitting open into jagged fissures. "Run!" Sarah shouted, tugging at Mark's arm, but the darkness was too strong. The air was thick with despair, heavy, suffocating. He couldn't let them go. "I want to leave you," he screamed, but before he could act, the beast lunged forward, its maw wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Time slowed as Mark recognized the moment, the inevitability of fear becoming a tangible force. The ground rumbled again, and the shadows writhed, throbbing with a life of their own. The beast's claws sliced the air, moving straight for Mark. Everything he feared flooded his mind: betrayal, loss, failure. In that instant, he felt the pull of darkness return, seductive whispers promising strength and power. "Mark, fight it!" Sarah's voice cut through the rising tempest. It was enough. He pushed back, focusing on the brilliant light held in his hands, but the shadows were relentless. With a desperate scream, Mark raised the pendant, channeling everything: hopes, fears, friendships into one concentrated plea. "We are strong together." And with that, an unearthly roar erupted as the pendant blazed into a blinding glare, the horizon around them fracturing. The shadows detonated, dispersing with a cacophony that shook the very core of their world. Then silence. The beast staggered back, its form shrinking, retreating amidst the chaos. But the witch's voice was louder than ever. "This isn't the end, Mark. You've merely postponed the inevitable. The darkness will find you when you least expect it." As the shadows began to recede, fear clutched tightly at Mark's chest. The ground cracked beneath him, the air grew colder, and dread coiled tightly in his gut. "Is it over?" Lisa gasped, her eyes wide with panic. But Mark couldn't respond, the witch's words swirling in his mind like a haunting refrain. No, not yet. In that moment, he saw something lurking just beyond the horizon, a figure, cloaked in shadow, watching. And with that sight came a realization: the ultimate test was still to come. What awaited them on the other side of victory? And would they truly be free from the witch's grasp, or was she still pulling the strings? The true battle was only beginning. The air was thick with tension, a choking fog that closed in around Mark as he stood frozen. The aftermath of their confrontation with the beast had left a valley of silence, yet in that stillness lurked a thread more profound than what had just transpired. What was that? Lisa's voice trembled, breaking the unsettling quiet. She glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting the darkness to leap back at them. Mark followed her gaze, heart pounding. The horizon remained unchanged, but he felt it, the unseen presence, the weight of something sinister circling them. "Let us move," Mark urged, grabbing Sarah's hand and pulling Lisa alongside. They didn't have the luxury of hesitation. They stumbled forward, feet slipping on crumbling earth. The shadows, while retracted, still whispered just out of reach, promising despair. Every step felt vulnerable, like walking on a tightrope above a chasm of darkness. Mark's instincts screamed at him to keep running, but the sensation of being hunted clung to his back like fog. He could almost hear the witch's unforgettable cackle echoing in his mind, a twisted lullaby that promised nightmares. Suddenly, the ground shook again, a deep rumble that jolted them to a halt. They exchanged fearful glances, and Mark tightened his grip on the pendant that still pulsed with a faint glow. "What now?" Sarah whispered, eyes darting around as if fearing the very shadows themselves. Just then, a low growl erupted from the depth of the forest, sending a shiver through each of them. The air grew colder, charging with static dread. It was a warning, a sign of something ancient and cruel stirring back to life. Mark knew that they de-angered forces they could barely comprehend. "Get back!" he shouted, as a twisted figure emerged from the thicket. It was as if the forest itself had birthed a new terror. The being was a grotesque silhouette, a fusion of man and shadow, its form writhing as if it were woven from the darkness they had just battled. "Oh my God!" Lisa gasped, stumbling backward. Sarah let out a strangled scream, but Mark's instincts kicked in. They were not just retreating now, they had to fight. "Stay together," he commanded, raising the pendant high above their heads. Light burst forth, illuminating the gnarled features of the creature. It recoiled, forming and shifting, its intent clear. It wanted them, craved the fear radiating from their trembling bodies. As Mark focused, the light from the pendant enveloped them, creating a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. The beast hissed and clawed at the light, screeching with rage and hunger. Mark felt a rush coursing through him of primal fury mixed with clarity. He couldn't let this creature claim them. But then, amidst the chaos, something buried deep within him stirred a memory. The witch had hinted at truths that shuddered just beneath the surface. "We must face the shadows complete," her words echoed ominously. In that instant, Mark understood. If they were to truly banish this evil, they needed to confront more than just the beast before them. They had to confront their own shadows, each buried fear and doubt that made them vulnerable and raw. "Lisa! Sarah!" Mark shouted, urgency seeping into his words. "What are we afraid of? Say it. We need to fight it together." With each confession that rang out amongst them their lost hopes, the guilt of their past, the light from the pendant flickered. Their individual fears formed a swirling tempest around them, merging into spectral forms that manifested in the air, a grotesque reflection of their inner turmoil. The creature howled, released from the confines of the shadows, drawn to their spread of fear and uncertainty. Mark felt the shadows surge, ready to consume them. "No!" he cried, planting his feet firmly. "This ends now." And just like that, he thrust the pendant forward, channeling their fears into a beacon of light that erupted, overwhelming the darkness around them. But as the blinding radiance filled the air, the creature's form began to distort. Was it fear or anger that surged back at them? The landscape twisted as a tempest of shadows encircled them, and through the screams of rage came the witch's voice again, sharp and taunting. "Face what lies within, Mark. Only then will you know true power." In that moment, realization struck. The witch had ensnared more than their bodies. She had infiltrated their very souls. They weren't just fighting a monster. They were battling the remnants of their own darkness. As the shadows thickened and surged forward, clawing at the edges of their light, Mark grasped the pendant tightly, ready to confront not just the entity before them, but the haunting fears within. Would strength and unity be enough to unravel the depths of their own struggle, or was that darkness an insurmountable force ready to devour them whole? The shadows loomed closer, and as they braced for what was to come, the echo of the witch resonated in the distance, leaving them questioning how far they would be tested. Mark's heart raced as the monstrous figure slithered closer, its eerie glow illuminating the twisted trees around them. Shadows danced in a frenzy, whispering dark truths that twisted their insides. "We can't be afraid," Mark shouted, the sound breaking through the oppressive stillness. "Together, we're stronger than this." The shadows coiled tighter, but with every syllable, he felt the pendant hum against his chest, steady and warm, a reminder of their unity. "Trust in each other," he called. "Face what haunts you." Lisa's voice quavered, but defiance sparkled in her eyes. "I'm scared of letting our family fall apart," she admitted, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. "We can't give in." Sarah nodded, her small voice trembling yet resolute. "I don't want to be afraid anymore." She stepped forward, her courage igniting a spark in Mark's heart. In that instant, the shadows recoiled as if repelled by the strength of their declarations. Mark felt their words lift like a shield, wrapping around them in a brilliant light. "That's it. Let us show them what true power is," he yelled, his voice resonating with conviction. As a wave of light burst forth from the pendant, illuminating the grotesque form of the beast, it roared in fury, the sound reverberating through the very ground beneath their feet. But Mark didn't falter. "Focus. Our fears only have power if we let them." With renewed purpose, Lisa and Sarah stepped closer to him, eyes locked ahead. Together they thrusted their hands forward in unison, channeling the energy through the pendant, and a radiant beam pierced the darkness. The creature stumbled back, shadows twisting away from the searing light as it screeched in agony, echoing like a lost soul. "You think you can win?" The witch's voice reverberated through the air, taunting and piercing. "The darkness is eternal." "No!" Mark shouted back, confusion intertwining with the strength bolstering in his chest. "The darkness only lives through fear. And we choose not to fear anymore." The ground shook violently, the air filled with electric energy. The shadows surged in a frenzied dance, desperate to consume the light. But the light grew brighter, flickering like the flames of a newfound ember, illuminating the rune-filled ground beneath them. Mark felt the air crackle with tension as the shadows swirled, tempted to expose each haunting memory. "What do you fear, Mark?" The allure in the witch's tone whispered seductively. "What about your failures?" Mark winced, the weight of memories clawing at his mind. The visions of missed opportunities, regrets, and disapproval flooded in. "You're not real," he bellowed, shoving the memories aside. "You can't touch me. I'll embrace each scar, each flaw." With that, the pendant flared brilliantly, the combined efforts of Lisa and Sarah filling the air with a magnificent pulse of energy that wove through them, pulling at the remnants of their past with power and light. The shadows howled, retreating into a darkness of their own making. "No! You will not overcome me!" the witch screeched, her voice dripping with rage. "You will never escape your darkness." Mark closed his eyes and focused, envisioning a future unclouded by regrets. "We don't have to be defined by our pasts. We are who we choose to be." The words spilled out like a fresh waterfall, overwhelming the throaty laughter. Suddenly, as they stood together, rooted in a divine warmth, the air erupted in a wave of light that expanded beyond them. It collided with the shadows, dispersing them like smoke in the wind. The ground cracked, illuminating the runes that had once whispered of curses but began to hum with their released power. In a colossal explosion of energy, the shadow beast shrieked, evaporating into wisps, as the witch's form twisted in rage, shadows fraying away. "This isn't over, Mark. You've just begun to unleash what lies within." A deafening silence enveloped them suddenly, and the remnants of pain and darkness dripped away like melting shadows in the sunlight. They braced themselves, standing shoulder to shoulder, hearts pounding and breaths shallow. Yet out of the stillness something shifted. Emerging from the thicket behind the breaking dawn, a figure stepped forward. It was the shadow from long before it hovered, a woman cloaked in dark hues and ethereal light. The very essence of the witch echoed through the air, but something was different. The air felt lighter, the atmosphere imbued with a tranquility they hadn't felt before. "We've broken the curse," Mark whispered, astonished. The woman's face shifted, revealing more than just malice. There was a vulnerability in her eyes, burdened by centuries of rage. She struggled against the shadows swirling around her, and with each passing second, she slowly strode forth. "Your strength lies within your unity," she spoke, her voice now smooth as silk. "You sought to cling to a power greater than me. Perhaps this world doesn't need to remain imprisoned. Mark felt a mixture of fear and hope. You can be free? He asked tentatively. With a nod, the figure began to dissolve, a final reminder of the productive pain they had confronted. As the shadows crumbled away entirely, Mark turned to Lisa and Sarah, their eyes wide with disbelief. "I think we did it," Sarah whispered, a shaky grin spreading across her face. Holding each other close, they felt the warmth returning, the lingering promises of brighter days breaking through their past. But worry lingered in Mark's heart. The witch's last echo hung in the air. Was the darkness truly vanquished, or simply biding its time? "Whatever happens, we face it together," he assured them, squeezing their hands, a bond forged stronger than any curse. As the first light of dawn illuminated the woods, they turned toward the cabin, the shadows now just echoes of the past. Together, they embraced the new day, looking forward not just with hope, but with a determination to cherish each moment as a reminder of their strength. And as they stepped back into the light, the horizon shifted, hinting at adventures yet to come, each heartbeat resonating with the understanding they carried forward. The true battle for light against shadow would continue, always unfolding, always together. Do it now. Subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. And if you enjoyed this epic conclusion, flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. Did you see the twist coming? Share your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support means everything. Let's keep this adventure alive.